Chapter 1, 131, 7th year, Interlude. Tuesday, January 24th, 1978, 7:50 a.m.
Oi, Padfoot, get up. Nearly 8, you lazy sod.
James woke them on Tuesday morning, calling through the curtains.
I've got a free study day, arsehole. Piss off.
Sirius groaned in reply, burying his head under his pillow.
You'll miss breakfast.
Ugh.
Fine, starve then.
James replied. Then,
Seen Mooney? His bed's empty. Don't think he should be off on his own, do you?
Sirius lifted the pillow from his face and looked at Remus, raising an eyebrow in question. Remus stared back in panic. Okay, James knew, but so far they'd managed to avoid his having any actual encounters with their relationship. Remus was very particular about it. He didn't want to be gawked at. He wanted to prove that everything was just the same as before, and that meant that what happened between him and Sirius in private ought to be kept, well, private. He'd been fastidious about bed sharing, making sure to get up early and creep back to his own bed, or else rumple his bedsheets and head straight for the shower, but it was the full moon and he was slower than usual.
Probably gone for breakfast, mate.
Sirius called back. He shrugged at Remus.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, hang on, I'll check the map. He's left it on his bedside table.
Remus slapped his head, astounded by his own stupidity.
I'm in here, James.
He shouted quickly, feeling himself turn red with embarrassment.
Oh.
They heard James stop still, just outside the bed curtains.
Oh, right, of course. Sorry, I didn't think...
His steps receded quickly towards the door.
Sorry, lads. See you later, eh?
The door slammed shut. Sirius snorted with laughter as Remus crawled under the sheets as if he could escape the embarrassment there.
Oh, come on.
Sirius laughed, trying to pull the sheets back.
It wasn't that bad.
It's horrible.
Remus replied, burying himself further.
I'll never be able to look him in the eye again.
Sirius crawled under the sheets too, chasing him.
It's not like we were doing anything. You've still got your pajamas on.
Prongs doesn't know that.
Remus retorted, sitting cross-legged, facing Sirius. It was like they were under their own little tent now, and reminded Remus of camping. That was such a nice memory that he felt a bit calmer. Even better. Sirius always held his hand when they were hidden away like this, and he reached out now, playing with Remus's long, scarred fingers, as though they were precious treasure.
I don't see what the fuss is about.
Sirius mused, lacing his soft white fingers between Remus's, then splaying them out, then wiggling them, like a children's game.
I'm sure he already assumes some things.
See? You can't say it either.
Well, I'm a gentleman.
Sirius smirked, looking up at him now. Even in the dark, Remus could feel Sirius's eyes burning. He was biting his lip too. Remus gave a little sigh, and Sirius quirked an eyebrow.
At least we know we've got the room to ourselves.
He placed a hand on each of Remus's knees and leaned in. Remus kissed him, but pushed him away.
No way. If we don't go down there right now, James is definitely going to think we're...
Shagging?
Being physically intimate,
Remus said piously. Sirius burst out laughing again and rolled back on the bed.
Oh, Mooney, you kill me. What happened to that rough little yob I used to know?
Some posh boy taught him to read.
Remus replied dryly, flinging back the covers and rubbing the static out of his curls.
Right. Quick shower, then we'll go down.
He jumped out of bed, wincing a bit at the bright sunlight filling the dorm room.
I like the sound of that.
Sirius called from the bed as Remus crossed the floor. In the bathroom doorway, he turned and gave Sirius his most withering look.
Downstairs. Pervert.
8:30 a.m. James couldn't quite look at either of them in the eye, as it happened, much to Sirius's amusement. Peter had his head down too, quietly shoveling porridge into his mouth, and for a horrifying moment Remus wondered whether he had told James exactly what he had seen in their bedroom only a few short days ago. That would be too much to come back from, Remus was sure. He distracted himself by listening to Mary talk, which was always easy to do. She was going out with a boy on the Hufflepuff Quidditch team these days, and was simultaneously extolling his virtues and bemoaning the pitfalls of seeing an athlete. Remus couldn't help but think that Mary was preaching to the choir a bit, as of course Lily, and if Sirius was to be believed, Marlene were both going out with Quidditch players too.
I mean, obviously he's fit. Like, Adonis level.
She gushed, dreamily.
And talk about stamina.
Marlene was rolling her eyes, and James was staring fixedly at his cup of tea while Lily giggled behind her hands. Mary was gloriously oblivious, in her element.
But then he has the gall to whine about thigh chafing from his bloody broom.
She cackled. James's ears had turned bright red, and Sirius was trying to catch his eye, a manic grin on his face. Mary carried on.
I told him if he thinks that's uncomfortable, he should try bleeding from his snatch 5 days a month.
Peter practically choked on his porridge. Lily covered her face, and Marlene slammed her hand on the table.
Fucking hell, Mary! Do you have to?
What?
Mary sat up, blinking, looking as though butter wouldn't melt on her wicked tongue.
Well, you're being a bit graphic for the breakfast table,
Lily said diplomatically.
We're all adults, aren't we?
Mary arched an eyebrow.
We're mature enough to talk about sex.
Right, I'd better be off.
James leapt to his feet, uncharacteristically clumsy, rattling the table as he did so. Lily looked up at him, surprised.
Where are you going?
Potions.
It's not for another 15. Okay, wait, I'll come with you.
She got up, still giving her boyfriend a strange look, and they left together.
Didn't know James was such a prude,
Mary commented.
Oh, it wasn't you, MacDonald.
Sirius explained, stretching his arms over his head and tousling his long hair.
Prongsy boy just had a bit of a surprise this morning. Ow.
Remus had kicked him sharply under the table. Marlene watched them both, sipping her tea with a knowing look. Fortunately, at that moment, the post owls swooped into the great hall, and a large barn owl dropped 2 letters in front of Remus's plate. He snatched them both up, eagerly. One was a postcard from Grant, forwarded on via the Potters, with a lewd cartoon on the front, depicting a man on the seashore holding an enormous red stick of Brighton rock against his crotch. The back just read, "Saw this and thought of you. Looking at flats next week. Love." Remus grinned at this and handed it to Sirius, who scowled comically. The second letter was from Professor Ferox, with a list of book recommendations Remus had requested on the history of the magical creatures classification system. They'd been writing back and forth since Christmas. It seemed Ferox was bored with his recuperation, finding himself at a loose end. Sirius watched Remus finish reading the letter.
Anything from...
He asked, giving a significant look. Remus shook his head. Nothing from his mother. Sirius tried to flash him a cheering smile.
Still time, eh?
Remus just shrugged.
Going to the library, see if I can find any of these before History of Magic.
He held up Ferox's list.
See you later, girls.
He nodded at Mary and Marlene.
See you in the hospital wing this evening?
Marlene asked hopefully. Ah, Remus remembered. It was Tuesday. He hadn't been attending the healing lessons Madame Pomfrey had kindly included him in for some weeks now, too busy memorizing curses. He didn't really want to go this evening, it being a full moon, but he looked at Marlene and felt guilty.
Of course.
He nodded.
See you then.
Sirius bounded happily alongside Remus as he made his way to the library, mentally working through his timetable for the day. He only had 3 classes, luckily, but he'd promised to catch up with Christopher at some point, and he wanted to write back to both Grant and Ferox, and he had an arithmancy essay due.
Mooney! Earth calling planet Mooney.
Sirius interrupted his thoughts.
We just walked past the library, if that's where you were heading.
Oh, bollocks.
Remus turned 180 degrees and started back, Sirius still in tow.
Care to share?
Oh, nothing. Just thinking.
Not worrying, I hope. About tonight.
A bit.
They entered the library and had to be quiet as they passed Madame Pince's desk. He'd actually been trying not to think about the coming moon. After all, Dumbledore had said not to. He'd said the Order were dealing with it, and Remus could only hope that that meant Alastair Moody was on the case, which made him feel slightly better. Still, Castor's warning had been ringing in his ears since Saturday, and it was impossible to forget.
I don't think we ought to leave the shack tonight,
Remus whispered.
If anything happens.
It won't. Dumbledore's dealing with it.
Sirius replied, leaning against the nearest bookcase casually, while Remus looked for the texts he wanted. Remus had to stop himself from tutting. James and Sirius put so much faith in Dumbledore, he often wondered whether he was missing something. But then, Remus trusted very few people over the age of 18, with good reason.
I know,
he said calmly.
But I'd like you to respect my wishes, if it's all the same to you.
Hey, don't be like that.
Sirius chided, gently.
Of course we will. Anything for our Mooney.
Remus found 3 of the books on Ferox's list, which cheered him up a bit. He took them to Madame Pince, then began to tuck them into his bag.
I'll take them.
Sirius offered, holding out his hands.
You don't want to be lugging them around all day. I'm going back to the dorm anyway.
Oh, cheers.
Remus handed them over.
Are you going to start on that arithmancy essay?
Not if I can possibly avoid it.
Sirius pulled a face.
See you at lunch? You're free this afternoon, aren't you?
Yeah. But I'm supposed to be seeing Christopher. Then there's that essay you're not doing, and healing class. And I really want to write back to Ferox today. If I can. I think he likes getting the post, since he's not allowed out much.
Merlin, Remus.
Sirius was shaking his head.
You've got to be at the shack by 6.
I'm aware.
Remus replied offhandedly, adjusting his book bag. It could really do with another mending spell. Unless you held it just right, the seams started splitting.
And are you planning to eat?
Sirius continued.
When have I ever forgotten a meal?
Remus poked his tongue out.
Anyway, I have to run. History. See you at lunch.
1:50 p.m. In spite of his promises, Remus was extremely late for lunch and had missed everyone except Sirius, who had waited back.
Sorry.
Remus gasped as he reached the table, a little breathless from running. He sat down.
Stayed back to talk to Kettleburn, then remembered I'd forgotten my notes in Professor Bin's room. History was a bloody waste too, all stuff I've covered in the reading. Oh, thank you.
Sirius had pushed a plate of sausage and mash across the table to him. Remus dug in, eating and talking as quickly as he could. They only had 10 minutes before lunch was over, and the school choir would want the hall for their weekly practice sessions.
Anyway, it worked out nicely in the end. I used the time to write my letter to Ferox and a note for Grant, so at least that's done. What's that?
Sirius had slid a stack of parchment across the table now. Remus drained his glass of pumpkin juice and looked down at it.
Arithmancy?
Your essay.
Sirius said casually.
Finished mine like a good boy, so I thought I'd do yours too.
You what?
Remus did a double take. Sirius was ridiculously good with a quill and had mimicked his own spidery handwriting perfectly.
I don't believe you.
How many times have you done it for Wormy? Or James, for that matter? He's still got a stick up his arse about this morning, by the way. Won't talk to me about it. Anyway, now that's done. And the letters. You're free for the afternoon.
Thanks so much, Padfoot, honestly. This is brilliant. But I did promise to see Christopher, and...
Nope.
Sirius was grinning like the cat who'd got the cream.
Just saw him. Told him you weren't well, so you couldn't see him.
Serious?
Well, you're not well.
Sirius responded innocently.
What with tonight? You ought to be resting.
I'll be fine once I've eaten.
Remus replied shortly, eyes on his food, mopping up the last of the gravy with his mashed potato. He'd lick the plate if he was shameless enough. Full moons made him ravenous. When he'd finished, he looked up and found Sirius staring at him, big eyes full of puppyish remorse.
Angry with me?
No.
Remus wiped his mouth with his sleeve and pushed his plate away in time for it to vanish back down to the kitchens.
But you can't reorganize my life like that just to get your own way.
I didn't mean it like that.
Sirius sat up, looking shocked.
You always have so much on, and it's insane. I mean, it's amazing, because you're amazing, and you can handle it, but you don't have to.
Okay.
Remus frowned, getting up. He wasn't sure exactly what Sirius was saying. He had always tried to keep busy. He liked being busy and useful to people.
And you'd written so many notes for that essay it practically wrote itself.
Sirius continued as they left the Great Hall and began to head for Gryffindor Tower.
And we can go and find Christopher if you want. He's probably in the library.
Sirius.
Remus sighed fondly.
Go on. I'll post the letters for you, and I'll see you for early dinner.
Sirius.
He checked the coast was clear, everyone was in lessons, and Peeves wasn't about. An empty corridor was a rare thing at Hogwarts.
Oh, bugger.
Sirius slapped his forehead.
I can't do early dinner. I've got that detention with Filch. Only for an hour, though. I'll be out in time for.
Sirius.
What?
He finally stopped talking in time for Remus to catch him unawares with a quick kiss on the lips.
Shut up, you idiot.
He smiled.
I'd much rather spend the afternoon with you than studying with Christopher.
Oh,
Sirius blushed, looking very pleased. 2:15 p.m., less than 20 minutes later, and Remus was completely blissed out, lying on his back with the record player at his feet and Sirius's head resting against his good hip. Bowie was singing and strumming his 8-string, and the two boys listening were sharing a spliff Sirius had charmed off a Ravenclaw earlier that week.
does the wolf get stoned too?
Sirius asked, reaching up for his turn. Remus shook his head, inhaling deeply and passing the joint.
Hungrier, probably.
He replied, voice high. Sirius murmured. Remus exhaled and closed his eyes, settling back on the pile of cushions. It was like sinking into warm treacle. He let his thoughts drift.
Can I ask you something?
He mumbled,
Fire away, Mooney.
What was Mary on about this morning?
About the Hufflepuff Keeper's stamina? I think she was blagging, to be honest with you.
Not that.
Remus chuckled.
The bleeding thing. Bleeding from her. What did she mean?
Sirius swiveled his head in Remus's lap to look up at him, wearing a bemused frown.
She was talking about, her time of the month.
He raised his eyebrows as if Remus was supposed to catch on somehow.
What's that?
Remus frowned back, none the wiser.
Remus, seriously?
What?
You know, girls are different from boys.
Well, I know that.
Remus bristled, feeling defensive now.
Okay, so girls get this thing every month.
Sirius began to explain. Remus was utterly horrified by the time he'd finished.
That's the most disgusting thing I've ever heard,
he said flatly.
It's natural.
Sirius shrugged.
I'll get Lily to explain it to you. I probably told it wrong. Bloody hell, you're nearly 18. How did you not know?
Oh yeah, make fun of the care home kid.
Remus tutted.
I grew up in a boys' reformatory. How am I supposed to know anything about girls?
Explains a lot.
Sirius said dryly. Remus flicked his ear sharply.
Ow!
What's your detention for anyway?
Remus asked, settling back again.
Hexed Crouch.
Oh, right.
Him and my darling brother were tormenting some second years, but obviously he got out of it because he's a prefect.
Sirius muttered darkly. He never said Regulus's name anymore, just my darling brother, in that cruel, overly plummy accent, which Remus thought was probably to make fun of Regulus's poshness. Except, and Remus would never say this out loud, for the first few years Remus had known Sirius, he'd had exactly the same clipped received enunciation.
Ought to try and ignore them if you can,
Remus advised.
I know he bothers you, but it's better to just stay out of his way. School's over soon.
I know,
Sirius said, hogging the spliff. Remus reached for it, snatching his wrist. God, he loved Sirius's wrists. The bones were so fine, the veins like blue ribbon under translucent skin. His own fingers wrapped all the way around easily. He held it now and pulled Sirius's hand to his mouth, sucking the end of the joint, then letting him go. Sirius just smirked up at him. The record stopped, and he had to get up to flip it to the B-side.
I suppose I just don't want him to hurt anyone.
He sighed, settling back down.
That's not your job.
Remus frowned.
Feels like it.
Sirius muttered, stretching.
You don't know what he was like when we were kids. He's not, I don't know. I just don't want him to do something he'll regret later on.
Remus thought very hard, which was no mean feat after a few lungfuls of Ravenclaw-grown hash.
Tell you something?
He asked.
A secret?
Sirius replied eagerly, getting up to sit beside him.
Sort of. But it's about Regulus. You might not want to hear it.
Sirius went a bit quiet, a bit more rigid, but he nodded.
Go on.
Remember the boggart that got me and Chris before Christmas?
How could I forget?
Sirius replied, a note of jealousy in his voice.
Wish I'd been there, never seen a boggart.
Werewolves not exciting enough for you now.
Remus raised his eyebrows.
Anyway, I checked the map, right after Chris went to get someone and... Well, I'm pretty sure it was Regulus who put the boggart there. He and Barty were nearby.
Remus craned his neck slightly so he could see Sirius's face and how he was taking the news. His mouth was a straight line. He looked more tired than angry. He shook his head.
Stupid prick,
He muttered.
It's all her, you know. He's an idiot for wanting to please her, obviously. But it's all her fault anyway.
Your mother?
Sirius nodded. Remus didn't know what to say. They had agreed, long ago, they could talk about anything but mothers, and that's the way it had been on Sirius's side anyway. Remus didn't want to go into it now either. Everything was so nice and warm, and if they could just hang on to it a bit longer, then this would be such a good memory, something he would have inside him forever. He reached over and stroked Sirius's cheek, that perfect jawline. He sat up and shifted around to face him.
Let's forget about all that shit.
He said,
It's boring.
Sirius kissed him. 4 p.m. Remus walked down alone for dinner at 4 as Sirius left for his detention. It was so early that Remus was the only one there, except for Marlene, who was also attending Madame Pomfrey's healing class.
I'm glad you're coming.
She beamed at him. Marlene smiled a lot these days.
I haven't seen you properly since Christmas.
Yeah, sorry.
Remus replied, beginning his second helping of lasagna, twice as big as the first.
Been so busy with NEWT's stuff.
I really wanted to talk to you about what happened on the train.
Oh,
Remus stared at her, fork halfway to his mouth. With all of the fuss about Castor and the full moon, Remus had been able to avoid talking about their strange meeting with Yasmin and Marlene on the train. He felt guilty again. Obviously, Marlene had been thinking about it a lot.
Hang on.
Marlene was saying, reaching for her wand.
Muffliato?
She murmured. The noise in the hall around them seemed to deaden slightly.
What was that?
He asked, keeping his voice low.
Stops people listening in.
Marlene explained.
Lily taught it to us. Mary uses it to gossip all the time in charms.
Wow.
Remus nodded, appreciatively.
So, anyway.
Marlene leaned forward on her elbows, eyes bright.
You and Sirius. Does anyone know?
Oh.
Remus finally set down his knife and fork, though he could have happily kept going.
Yeah, actually. James and Peter, Lily too.
Really?
Yeah.
He nodded, checking that there was definitely nobody listening.
Only recently, though. What about you and Yaz?
No one,
She said firmly.
Not even Mary?
least of all her.
Marlene said ruefully. Remus decided not to inquire further. He'd had enough revelations concerning Mary for one day.
Has it been going on long? You two?
He asked.
I had no idea.
Sorry.
Marlene blushed, looking down.
I've known I was different, I suppose, for a long time now, and I really wanted to say something to you, especially after the summer, but I don't know. How do you bring it up?
Tell me about it.
Remus agreed, eagerly.
Yaz has been my girlfriend since just before Christmas. She's incredible.
Marlene was smiling again, and Remus could practically feel the joy radiating from her. He touched her hand gently.
I'm really happy for you.
Thanks.
She squeezed his hand back.
But what about you? More to the point, what about Sirius?
What about him?
I'm just flabbergasted, really. Is he fully queer or more AC/DC?
You know, I haven't asked. We don't really talk about that sort of thing.
You don't?
She gave him an odd sideways glance.
Doesn't it bother you? His history with girls?
No.
Remus felt himself growing hot under the collar. This was exactly the sort of thing he wanted to avoid discussing, with anyone.
It's not relevant.
Okay.
Marlene shrugged, though she looked unconvinced.
If it works, I suppose.
He didn't respond to that, and eventually the muffliato spell wore off and they finished eating before making their way to their healing class at 4:30. Marlene was planning to tell Mary, she said, when the time was right. Remus knew that argument well enough and didn't think it was really his place to offer advice. It was nice to know that someone else knew how he felt, at least, even just a little bit. The healing class passed very slowly. Remus found that he was still pretty stoned, plus quite full, which made him sleepy. He tried to listen to Madame Pomfrey's lecture on circulatory diagnostic spells, but his mind kept wandering, drifting back to his bed, and Sirius. The kindly nurse assumed he was just out of it because the moon was close, and didn't chastise him as she usually might. He ought to have felt bad about that, but he was too happy daydreaming to worry too much. 6:30 p.m. Remus hung back in the hospital wing and sat quietly in Madame Pomfrey's office while she tidied a few things away before the pair of them made their journey down to the shack together. There would only be 4 more full moons at Hogwarts after this one, Remus realised. He knew he would miss Poppy Pomfrey more than he could ever tell her. She would always be the first person who had ever tried to make him comfortable, the first person who ever thought they could help. She bid him goodbye and promised to return first thing in the morning, as always. He put on the same brave face he'd used when he was 11 and waved to her cheerily from the bed as she closed the door. Alone, Remus stared at the floor for a bit, trying to recall his afternoon and suppress the growing dread in the pit of his stomach. He got up and paced a bit, for something to do. In time, the door creaked open once more, and James poked his head around the corner. He glanced around the room before entering, looking just as awkward as he had that morning.
"Hiya, Moony,"
he said, pushing his glasses up his nose nervously as he entered.
"No Wormtail yet."
I think he had lines to do for McGonagall.
Remus said, sitting on the bed again.
"Righto."
James nodded. He stood leaning against the wall. They were completely silent for a good 3 minutes. Remus tried not to fidget, but the quiet was pretty unbearable. He and James had never been awkward before. Even after Remus came out, he was the first to swear that nothing had changed. But of course now something really had changed, something which had shifted and skewed the dynamic. James was generally good at rolling with the punches, but it seemed he had a real blind spot when it came to Sirius Black.
"Lily wants to be an animagus now,"
James said suddenly, clearly trying to crack the tension.
Of course she does.
Remus smiled fondly.
Bet she masters it in half the time you lot took.
"You're not wrong."
James laughed, appreciatively. But that only hit a dead end, and silence invaded the space between them once more. Remus swallowed and watched James, who was looking at his feet. He had just made up his mind to speak, to make some joke, or ask about Quidditch, when James looked up, suddenly, catching his eye.
"Look, Moony, I'm really sorry about this morning,"
he said, all in a rush, as if he'd been holding his breath. Remus blinked.
You're sorry?
"Yeah, I should have realised. You know, you two are, together, going out, whatever. I shouldn't have been so surprised."
It's okay, Prongs.
Remus said kindly.
I'm sorry. We've been trying not to rub in your face too much, and I swear nothing was happening this morning. I just sleep there sometimes.
"See, that's what I mean. You shouldn't have to sneak around."
James burst out.
"Really, it's not a problem. You should sleep where you want to sleep."
Oh, okay, thank you.
Remus nodded.
"I don't want things to be weird."
James said helplessly.
Me neither.
Remus insisted.
That's the last thing I want. Sirius, too. I just wanted to keep a low profile because, well, he's your best friend, and him and me seeing each other doesn't mean...
"I never thought it did,"
James said, hurriedly. He had crossed the room now, his inherent good nature taking over as he sat down next to Remus on the bed.
"And you're my best friend too, Remus."
Remus looked down at his hands shyly.
Christ, Potter.
He grinned.
Why'd you always have to be so perfect?
"Born that way."
James shrugged, mirroring Remus's grin.
"Come here, Tosser."
He pulled him in for a hug. Remus relaxed finally. All was well. At that moment, the door swung open once more, and Sirius sauntered into the room, closely followed by Peter.
Oi!
Sirius barked, pointing at James.
Hands off my man!